Any men who haven't signed up for HeForShe, there's a live possibility in the back of the room. It's not a prerequisite to stay in the room, but you can sign up and become a HeForShe if you haven't already. This was a message only to the men. We're just waiting for the last arrivals. Vi venter bare lige på at få de sidste igennem det her FN-sikkerhedssystem, så et par minutter mere. Okay, I think we are about ready. Can you hear me? And I'm sure we will lower the music in any seconds. My name is Asger Ryl, and I am the Nordic Director of UN Women, and it gives me tremendous pleasure to invite you to this event, and tremendously pleasure to invite you to UN City. And first of all, I will introduce or welcome on the podium Mads Erhardt, who would talk about Social Media Week. I don't think Mads needs a lot of introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Social Media Week Copenhagen.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to UN City for hosting us here today. It's fantastic that we yet again can be here. We were here last year as well. First of all, UN City, thank you very much. In terms of Social Media Week, we kind of feel that we are a little bit like a mini UN, because by now we are actually taking place in 29 cities across the globe. Not in the same week, but across the year. So we are aspiring to be the same organization as where we are today. From the Social Media Week Copenhagen point of view, we are excited to have 105 events in the program this year, and it's a busy week. There are still some of the events that have open seats, so you can check the program. There's a lot of inspiring and really interesting talks going on throughout the week. We are also live streaming the events from UN City today, so you should just be aware that you are actually being watched. And that's of course great, so we are also welcoming a lot of people that are watching not being able to be here. And with that said, I have no further ado to be really excited about the program. Denmark is known to be a country with a big focus on gender equality, so I think it's very fitting that we have the honor to host the HeForShe campaign here. And I'm going to give the word back to Asger.
Thanks a lot, Mads. And now, on behalf of the entire UN City, and in particular the Public Diplomacy Office of the UN City, and on the other organizations, many of them are here today, and UN City is actually a place of 10 UN organizations, among them UNFPA, World Food Programme, UNDP, UNICEF, WHO, many of those that you know, and also UN Women, the little sister of the UN family, or the latest arrival in the UN family, and we will talk much more about UN Women, but also, of course, the reason why we're here today, our HeForShe campaign. But again, a warm welcome to United Nations and to UN Women for this exciting event that I personally have looked very much forward to, and the Nordic team of UN Women certainly have looked very much forward to. Now it is my great honor and pleasure and to introduce our keynote speaker, the one and only HeForShe star, Miss Elizabeth Nehemiah. Elizabeth is amazing, but she also obviously have a background. She is currently the senior advisor to our Executive Director and Undersecretary General of UN Women. But before that, Elizabeth have worked in many, many places, public and private, and United Nations, UNH, WHO, the World Bank, and in her private sector work and life, she has been the Director of External Affairs at Merck. And somewhere in between all of this, she also found time to be the founder of an organization called Africa IQ, which is an innovative social impact organization focusing in particularly on sustainable economic growth and development. And now, Elizabeth have put all her emphasis and focus on HeForShe, and you will get the history of this amazing campaign. At least we believe so. Elizabeth also has had time to get a master's degree from London School of Economics in political science, and she is originally from Zimbabwe. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm and big and great hand to the one and only Elizabeth.
Good morning, colleagues. It is my absolute honor to be standing here before you today. Before I commence, I also want to introduce a colleague of mine, Lauren Brown, who is joining me from McKinsey. She has been seconded to come and support me in New York for the next 6 months as we roll out the HeForShe campaign. I want to start with telling a very small story. A little over 40 years ago, in a small village in Zimbabwe, a teenage girl gave birth to a child. 6 months later, she was told that the child only had 1 week to live because the child had contracted a disease called kwashiorkor, which is a form of severe malnutrition, which can actually cause permanent brain damage and learning disabilities. But a miracle happened. The child survived. And that child was me. And so the HeForShe is part of my personal story, as well as the story of UN Women. But before I go into this story, I wanted to just give you a flavor of what's waiting for us today. This is Social Media Week, so we are going to make it fun. We are going to make it exciting. It is also a learning opportunity for us as well. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. And so we have some really fun and exciting things for you, some prizes as well for you, for those that are smart enough and can take on our challenges that we're going to be posing throughout the day. I've sort of segmented this session in different sections, again, to make sure that we have that time to pause. I think 2 hours can be quite a long time to just sit there and listen, so we'll make it as fun as possible. But I want to start with a speech from Emma Watson. Sorry. Are we controlling from here?
Your Excellencies, UN Secretary General, President of the...
No.
of the General Assembly, Executive Director of UN Women, and distinguished guests. Today, we are launching a campaign called HeForShe. I am reaching out to you because we need your help. We want to end gender inequality, and to do this, we need everyone involved. This is the first campaign of its kind at the UN. We want to try and galvanize as many men and boys as possible to be advocates for change. And we don't just want to talk about it. We want to try and make sure that it's tangible. I was appointed as Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women 6 months ago. And the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I have realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop. For the record, feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. I started questioning gender-based assumptions a long time ago. When I was 8, I was confused being called bossy because I wanted to direct the plays that we would put on for our parents, but the boys were not. When at 14, I started to be sexualized by certain elements of the media. When at 15, my girlfriends started dropping out of their beloved sports teams because they didn't want to appear muscly. When at 18, my male friends were unable to express their feelings. I decided that I was a feminist, and this seemed uncomplicated to me. But my recent research has shown me that feminism has become an unpopular word. Women are choosing not to identify as feminist. Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong, too aggressive, isolating, and anti-men, unattractive even. Why has the word become such an uncomfortable one? I am from Britain, and I think it is right that I am paid the same as my male counterparts. I think it is right that I should be able to make decisions about my own body. I think it is right that women be involved on my behalf in the policies and the decisions that will affect my life. I think it is right that socially I am afforded the same respect as men. But sadly, I can say that there is no one country in the world where all women can expect to receive these rights. No country in the world can yet say that they have achieved gender equality. These rights I consider to be human rights, but I am one of the lucky ones. My life is a sheer privilege because my parents didn't love me less because I was born a daughter. My school did not limit me because I was a girl. My mentors didn't assume that I would go less far because I might give birth to a child one day. These influences were the gender equality ambassadors that made me who I am today. They may not know it, but they are the inadvertent feminists who are changing the world today.
So we're going to stop there. We can always go back to Emma Watson's speech. So we launched the HeForShe on September the 20th last year in 2014. But before I go on and sort of walk you through the campaign, I wanted to continue with the narration of my story. Actually, HeForShe is almost a story of unexpected connections. So there I was growing up in a small village in Zimbabwe. At the same time, next door to my country is a country called South Africa. And at the same time, a new leader was emerging in South Africa. This was the anti-apartheid movement. She was at the forefront of the anti-apartheid movement, working alongside Nelson Mandela. She would then become appointed by Nelson Mandela to work within his cabinet. And through his mentorship, in 2005, this young woman became the first deputy president of South Africa as a woman. And a little bit over a year ago, she was then appointed to be the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. And that woman is Phumzile, who is my current boss. So it's a very interesting story that our lives would somewhat intertwine. A year ago, she asked me and invited me to come and support her at UN Women. And it was at that time that we were sort of discussing about what her legacy may look like. And I remember her saying to me, it's just not about me. It's about the women and the girls of the world. It's about what needs to change in this century. It's about creating the 21st century as that defining moment when all of society rallied together and we were able to achieve equality. So as we're thinking about what that might take, what is it that we could do that we had not yet explored as the women movement, it became very clear to both her and I that perhaps from our own humble upbringings, there was something that we could leverage. There was something that we could apply to the work that we're trying to pursue. As I'd mentioned to you before, I'm from a small village. The women, as most of you know, sort of run the household. But in my own community, when it came to the bigger decisions, the men made the decisions. And for Phumzile, similarly, she's a woman who understood during the anti-apartheid era that you have to be able to take what may look like opposites in order to create a positive. Apartheid was about bringing together the whites and the blacks, and this is how they were able to achieve this. In my own upbringing, I realized that we can do so much, and we have as the women movement, but the progress has been painfully slow. And so we needed to figure out a way that we make this a societal issue, because there was almost a disconnect for me when we spoke about how we, as UN women, were going to end child marriage, we're going to end violence against women, and there was no mention of men. And then we sort of thought, how can we win with half the team sitting on the bench? So really, HeForShe is about creating this solidarity. It's about bringing men and women to work together on this common goal, because ultimately, as you know, gender inequality can no longer just remain a woman issue. It's a societal issue. It affects all of us. It affects societies, and men are part of that society. And actually, to our surprise, we realized too that there were actually a few good men that wanted to be part of this movement, and yet had never really found a way that they could contribute. So this is really the formation of the HeForShe. And now I want to walk you through the presentation of HeForShe. So it's slightly more academic, but we'll try and make it fun. So a quick reminder that our Twitter account is HeForShe, at HeForShe. My own Twitter account is on the slide as well, the hashtag HeForShe, but I also understand that there is a social media hashtag, and Oscar, you can speak to it to make sure that people are using the right hashtags.
SMW for Social Media Week, and then HeForShe. SMW HeForShe.
Okay. So what is HeForShe? Like I said to you, it is about solidarity. It's about men and women working together. It is not about men speaking on behalf of women. It's about men speaking in support of women, working alongside women for the benefit of all. Again, here's our foundation, which I mentioned to you, was really the premise that gender inequality is not only a woman issue, it's a societal issue. It requires all of us working together to achieve it. There's a very powerful statement here from Don McPherson, who's one of the well-known sports person in the US, who once said, "As a black man, I would not be standing here today if white people had not stood beside blacks in the civil rights movement. It is time for men to stand beside women in the gender equality movement." I think this is such a powerful statement that sort of encapsulates what it is that we're trying to do. How do we get to gender equality? Again, it starts with this solidarity platform that we want men to self-identify with the issue. We want men to join us in this struggle. We want all of society to benefit as a result of this campaign. And it is also about contributing to UN Women's strategic pillar. As you may know, UN Women is the global entity for women and girls around the world. And so HeForShe is really looking at how can we mobilize men to support the efforts of UN Women and the implementation of our strategic goals. The campaign, we have set ourselves a very, very ambitious goal. We would like to mobilize 1 billion men from around the world to stand up and be advocates for gender equality. We can speak, I think, in more details in terms of what that may look like. But again, it's important to point out that the HeForShe is both an online and an offline campaign. It is being implemented across all the UN Women country offices in 90 countries around the world, but also by our sister agencies within the UN system as a whole. How we work, there is the 3 A's of the HeForShe. The first A is that this is an awareness platform, right? We want to educate men and boys on gender equality. We want them to find their role and their voice and their contribution in this space. We are also looking at the advocacy platform of HeForShe, where we hope to make concrete and sustainable change through policy and programming. So as I mentioned to you, supporting the UN Women's policy agenda as well as their programmatic agenda. The last A for HeForShe is around action, looking at, again, how can we mobilize resources to support women and girls programming around the world, but also looking at how can we drive for concrete action from grassroots level, but also from the top-down level, which is part of our pilot initiative that Lauren will speak to a bit later on. So these are the 3 A's of the HeForShe in terms of what we are trying to accomplish. So it goes beyond awareness to really looking at how we can create sustainable change and impact. So as I mentioned to you, we have 2 approaches, our bottom-up and our top-down. I am going to be in this section of the presentation focusing mainly on the bottom-up approach. So we have the website. We have created a very innovative and dynamic map which shows men around the world 24 hours a day how they are interacting with the campaign. So signing up, taking their HeForShe commitment. We'll take a look at this in a little while and kind of see where Denmark is in terms of your numbers, because you can also visually see how many men have been mobilized per each country. It is a grassroots movement, ultimately the HeForShe campaign. So it is not about, UN Women trying to do this alone. It is really about empowering society to own this movement, to come up with their own solutions, to identify problems within their own societies, and collectively work with us to achieve gender equality. The top-down, as I mentioned to you, I'm going to skip this for the time being. So where are we today in terms of our numbers? We are now on to 221,000 men. But I actually want to pause and tell you a small story again in terms of how far we've come. When we launched the campaign on September the 20th, we made the first call to action for the first 100,000 men. And to be honest with you, we didn't give it a timeline because we didn't know how long it would take for us to mobilize 100,000 men. And to our surprise, only after 3 days, we had reached more than 100,000 men around the world. The impressive thing wasn't the number. The impressive thing was to literally see the entire world map light up. We started with a gray map, and as a person activist, the color changed. In 3 days, in every single country in the world, at least 1 man had heard about the HeForShe campaign. He had gotten online and activated their country. In 3 days, every single country had lit up except for 2 countries. And for us, that was quite humbling. So again, this is social media, so we can throw some social media stats for you. The video that you just saw from Emma Watson, it was watched more than 100 million times around the globe. We had our first 100,000 commitments in the first 3 days of the campaign in almost every country in the world. And on social media, we reached 1.2 billion social media impressions in the first 7 days of the campaign. And in fact, Twitter went on to paint our trending hashtag on their wall, declaring us one of the most catalytic moments of 2014. In a while, I'll also show you this wonderful picture that they did for us. And then, of course, we did the Impact 10 by 10 by 10, which is the pilot initiative, which I'm going to skip again for now because it's part of the top-down approach. We are harnessing the power of influencers as part of the HeForShe campaign. I think as you came in this morning, you saw some of the iconic men that have lent their voices to the campaign. So it's looking at both, how can we leverage the power of the celebrities, but also how can we leverage the power of influential people within communities, whether it be religious leaders, community leaders, politicians as well, role models within communities. It is really about touching every single level of society and making sure, again, as we implement the campaign within countries, we are localizing the campaign, we are looking for local heroes, and it's not always going to be our A-list Hollywood celebrities to make it relevant. I'm skipping this slide. Let me skip this slide. So I've come to the end of this section of the PowerPoint, and I wanted to just again remind you, I think Asger did this at the beginning, that we are looking for the numbers of Denmark to go up. Currently, I think we are on to, Lauren, 1,800 men have signed up in Denmark. We think that that number is less than 1%, and we would like to give you a challenge and see, because it's Social Media Week, let's see how far we can get the number up during this session. This is one of those meetings where typically they say, put away your phone. We are saying, take out your phone. Right now, go on your Twitter. We're going to take a small break. We want all the men that are in this room to sign up, and you can do this from your phone as well. So HeForShe.org is the address. You click on Take Action, and just do this. I can walk you through the process. And for the women as well, no, I have to go on the mic, sorry. So I'll take my moment. So Oscar, you want to drive? So if we go on to Take Action, we can see the map. Okay. Okay, Oscar, where is your? You can do this much faster than me, right? Right here?
Yes.
So, as you can see, we are on to 1,895 men in Denmark. I don't want to compare, but I'm sure your neighbors are doing much better than you are. So I would like us to take out our phones, go to HeForShe.org, take action. For the women, again, this is a solidarity campaign, so your role is as critical as well. So for anyone who has social media, Twitter, Facebook, can you go on and send it to at least 5 of your contacts, ask them to sign up. We are going to be giving an award at the end of section 2. So whoever manages to mobilize as many men as possible during the next 10 minutes or so, they will get an award, a HeForShe award. So we'll take 2 minutes to engage with social media. So the number goes up live as well, so we can actually track. So who is good at keeping tags? Somebody wants to know, are you noting where we are? We are at 1,895. Let's see if the number goes up. Thank you. We have 3 men so far.
Right direction, right direction.
And also we encourage you, men, as you sign up, you have an option to tweet your commitment. So please, by all means, make sure you include the social media week hashtag as well, so we know it's coming from here. Okay. Next thing. So we're going to open with this. Emma Watson video. Okay, we are on to our section 2, where we are going to speak to you about the pilot initiative called Impact 10 by 10 by 10, which is our top-down approach of the HeForShe campaign. And again, to kickstart, we are going to take a look at a video, again from Emma Watson, where she launched the Impact 10 by 10 by 10 at Davos in January. So we'll listen to that in again, few minutes, and then we'll stop, and Laura will come and give you the full briefing on that.
I think it would be fair to say, since the HeForShe launch in New York last September, I think it would be fair to say that my colleagues and I have been stunned by the response. The HeForShe conference was watched over 11 million times, sparking 1.2 billion social media conversations, culminating in the HeForShe hashtag becoming so popular that Twitter painted it on the walls of its headquarters. And men from almost every country in the world signed up to our commitment. Everyone, from Desmond Tutu to Prince Harry to Hillary Clinton to Yoko Ono, have issued their support or contacted us since September 20th. Everything from marathons being run, merchandise being created, 15-year-old boys writing to national newspapers, deploring female discrimination, young girls collecting hundreds of signatures. It's all happened in the last 4 months. I couldn't have dreamed it, but it's happened. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support. So what is Impact 10 by 10 by 10? It's about engaging governments, businesses, and universities, and having them make concrete commitments to gender equality. But I want to hear from the human beings that are behind these organizations. I spoke about some of my story in September. What are your stories? Girls, who have been your mentors? Parents, did you make sure you treated your children equally? If so, how have you done it? Husbands, have you been supporting your female partner privately so that she can fulfill her dreams too? Young men, have you spoken up in a conversation when a woman was casually degraded or dismissed? How did this affect you? How did this affect the woman you stepped up for? Businessmen, have you mentored, supported, or engaged women in leadership positions? Writers, have you challenged the language and imagery used to portray women in the media? CEOs, have you implemented the women's empowerment principles in your own company? What change have you seen? Are you someone that has been persuading men to become HeForShes and collecting their signatures for our website? How many have you got? We want to know. We want to hear from you.
Great. So as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, we kind of thought about the campaign when it launched as just a platform for awareness. We wanted to bring attention to the issue. We wanted to really change the conversation. But since then, we've gotten a bit more ambitious, and we went from wanting to kind of raise the banner and broaden the conversation to really push for impactful change. So what we did was, as people started lending their name to the campaign, as we saw the map light up across the world, we wanted to make something of this grassroots momentum and to really get people to commit to making change within their organizations, within their universities, within their companies, within their governments. And the image that's up on the screen right now is just a reflection of really how much grassroots momentum there was around this. So I think the number was 1.2 billion. We had social media impressions when the campaign launched. And so as we thought about where to go from here, we wanted to turn the grassroots kind of groundswell momentum into change at a systemic level, and to really make more of the commitments that were already coming from individuals from all of these organizations. So you just heard Emma launch the Impact 10 by 10 by 10 program at Davos. We launched in January, so just a few months ago, with a couple of kind of real standard setters in the space. So we launched with the heads of state from Sierra Leone, the Netherlands, and Sweden. And we had CEOs from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Unilever, and Tupperware, who sat with us and came to Davos and talked about the commitments they were going to make to gender equality. You heard kind of a bit of the way that we were thinking about Impact 10 by 10 by 10, but the idea is kind of at the highest level to think about bringing together gold standard setters in gender equality who are leading across different sectors in public and the private sector and academia. So what that's looked like is getting 10 heads of state, 10 university presidents, and 10 CEOs to commit to making gender equality a kind of an institutional priority for all of their organizations. Since our kind of 3x3 launch in January, we now have new commitments. We have all 10 universities committed. We have 10 heads of states committed from across the world. And we have a whole new set of CEOs committed. And we're excited to see their commitments, excited to see kind of their momentum behind this. And they'll all be announcing new commitments around International Women's Day, which, as you probably know, is March 8th. So I think this has just been a really interesting moment for us to see how else the campaign has changed and has kind of continued to evolve. We've been really excited to see the commitments coming from across the world, from across every country, from people like you. We've also been really, really moved to see the commitment coming from the highest levels, from governments and CEOs, and we're excited to see what this can do next.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
So on that note, I am going to tell you two very simple impact stories. We are actually currently revamping our website to be able to include these impact stories so people can also start to see the groundswell that's happening around us, but also those stories will serve as thought starters for other men. We are still getting emails from men that are sort of saying, I've signed up, what more can I do? In fact, right after we launched, we started getting thousands of emails, and our rate has not decreased at all. I think on average, we have about 500 to 600 emails on a daily basis from around the world, men saying, I've now signed up, what more can I do? Or this is the action that I've taken since I signed up. Two very powerful stories. Right after we launched, our executive director got an email from a man who lived in a small village in Nigeria. He had to travel for more than 2 hours one way to be able to find an internet cafe. And he wrote to her a very, very personal story. And he said to her, Madam, I grew up all my life next door to a man who beat up his wife. And 2 weeks ago, I was in my house, and I was listening to my radio, and your voice came on, and you spoke about something called the HeForShe campaign, and you spoke about the need for men to play their role. And within a few hours, I heard the woman cry again as the husband started to beat her up. And for the first time in my life, I felt compelled to do something. I went over, I confronted the husband, I stopped her from beating her. Madam, it's been 2 months. The woman has not cried again. Thank you for giving me a voice. So we realized at that point that, maybe we were tapping into something that, the world had been waiting for, that men had been waiting for, that they wanted to be part of the solution. Another really powerful story, again, sadly, they're both coming out of Africa, so I guess we need more stories from non-African stories. But this is from my own country. A man who signed up to be a HeForShe and then realized that he wanted to do more than just become a clique activist. And so he went around his village, he collected all the men that beat up their wives, and he started a husband school. And it is now his own HeForShe commitment to turn these men into better husbands and fathers. And it's a very simple story. It's not sophisticated. It's underneath a tree every single Saturday, rallying them and teaching them to become better husbands and fathers. So it's again, it's really powerful. I feel like we've been doing all the talking, so I would like to open up for questions. But before I do that, I'm going to show you, again, back to our grassroots element of the campaign, a PSA of ordinary men speaking about what this means, what it means for them to be HeForShe. And then I would actually like to, again, go back to our social media and open up for questions. But the questions will come via social media. And I would like for you to, once we open up for questions, send your questions to my hashtag _Nyamayaro. We'll bring it up for you again. And then we'll select some questions and we can answer those for you. We'll also have the mic around, but I think we should, again, leverage the social media aspects of this event. So over to the next PSA.
Inequality of opportunity that is present is probably one of the most harmful things in our society. And I think as a woman, that is probably the hardest thing to get over.
This is why we have to do this from our point of view, from our perspective. If we don't change it, the attitude, then it's never going to change.
Understand that it's not always speaking out for women, but with women, alongside women, because we don't want to reinforce that dominance.
I'm a HeForShe because I have an awareness. I can't let my daughters or my wife suffer because I didn't do my job. It starts with me.
Really put yourself in somebody's shoes and say, hey, if this was my mother, if this was my sister, if this was my daughter, would I like the way she's being treated? Am I setting the right example for other young men?
If having the discussion about this topic, like that's something that we bring back, like to our neighborhoods, to our communities, to our families, because women are by right like pillars of our community. Like there are no men if there are women.
I'm a HeForShe for every single survivor that I've ever met, so that they can have even the slightest hope that, you know, a world where these conversations are not needed is, you know, attainable.
I am a HeForShe.
I am a HeForShe.
I am a HeForShe.
We are HeForShe.
Speaking of speaking up, can we check our map and see where we are? Who wants to take a guess? How many do you think we've gone out by?
We were at 3 last time.
25.
25? And anyone else? There's a prize. It's a HeForShe pin. Any other guess?
25 is good, yeah.
No, but we'll see who's close. So we have a 7. No, you're not. We have a 7, we have a 25, and 15. Okay. 20? Okay. So let's see. I'm going to refresh. Oops.
Yes. Oh, my.
What's that?
27.
Who said 25? Okay, you get a pin. Okay, you want to move? Okay. A mixture of both. Yeah.
Don't worry. Okay, we're going to open up a little bit for first round, an initial round of questions or comments. But as Elizabeth said, also use the social media for this. Elizabeth is monitoring and so forth, but there are also 2 mics in the room, Elise and Frida. So raise your hand and remember to speak in the mic. Only speak in the mic because we are live. And it won't work if you are not speaking into the mic for the millions and billions of viewers out in the world. No pressure. Any comments or questions at this point? And we are watching the Twitter and the hashtags and you name it. Yeah, great.
In fact, let me just add on as well that we are not done with the presentation yet, but we just wanted to take a break because I think it can be too much. Next to come, we will share with you some lessons learned in terms of the campaign. Again, bearing in mind this campaign is only 4 months old, by the way. And then we also want to do some crowdsourcing at the end. But by all means, let's take some questions.
Thank you. My name is Sebastian, and I joined the HeForShe campaign, right around the time the Emma Watson speech came out. And I could have been one of the men sending you an email asking, okay, so what should I do next? And I know that's a very young campaign. However, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the progress in terms of the bottom up. You're talking about the bottom up today, and I understand that there's a lot of nice stuff from the top down, but as a signatory or as the signer of the pledge, like what do you do next? And especially if you could comment on how you hope to maybe reach some kind of peer accountability. I mean, because it's easy to sign up to something, and indeed, often the UN system makes people, they're participants or they're signees or whatever, without a lot of accountability going the other way. And if you want accountability to really prosper at the grassroots level or at the individual level, you need some kind of peer accountability where my other friends or whether they're male or female, kind of hold me accountable to the pledge that I've signed. So what are your thoughts on that?
Thanks a lot. We'll definitely take 1 or 2 more. I think Elizabeth can handle that. Yeah, there's a lady down there in green.
Hello, my name's Tennille. I have a question about some of the criticism that the campaign has received, and some of it which certainly resonates with me, which is the idea that the campaign, while it has positive aspects of getting men involved, also values women only in their relationship to men, that men are the savior, the protector, the defender. And I guess that video sort of reinforced that, men talking about women as daughters and as mothers, but I guess, again, that's in their relationship to men. And I would ask, where are the women in this campaign, and why, again, have they been silenced?
Thanks a lot. One last one in this round. Yes, down in the back there. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was kind of in prolonging on the last question, but I just remember when the campaign was launched, I watched the speech of Emma Watson, and she talked about the reason why men also need to be involved is also because they are affected by gender inequality. So she also put some focus on situations where also men can be, in a vulnerable position. And I just remember, I thought that was a nuanced way to present the battle for gender equality. But it doesn't seem like it's been that visible in the after the campaign had been launched. So I was just wondering, is that something that you've been, been preparing to include, or is it mainly just the female issues?
Thanks a lot, and now floor is yours.
Thank you very much for very provocative, very insightful questions. I would do my best to try and answer them. But again, important to point out as well, as I mentioned to you, we are really at the beginning of this campaign. It is all still a learning phase for us as well. So any comments and contribution that you can make will be very much welcome. I will start with your question, the gentleman, our first HeForShe man. Yes, it is indeed important to look at how we can create this bottom-up approach in a much more meaningful way. We have a small challenge right now. The small challenge is that we are trying not to be too prescriptive, right? Some of the criticism that we got actually from men was that they have not found a way to engage with the women movement for several reasons. One of them is that we tend to male bash. The second thing was that they are meant to feel guilty for the sins of other men. And so, and the fact that we always tell them what to do. So we really wanted to create this solidarity and sort of, kind of maybe not make it too prescriptive, but for men themselves to tell us what it is that they are going to do. In fact, in December, we did our first email communication. You might have received it if you're part of the early people, saying to the men themselves, can you tell us ideas? What actions have you taken? What are some of the things that men should take? So that, again, it's not us telling them what to do, because we also believe that when someone is committed and it's coming from them, we see a high level of engagement and commitment. So we are looking at actually crowdsourcing. That's the next phase of this campaign, in a much wider way, speaking to both men and women in terms of what are some of the simple ideas that men and women can collectively do. Because yes, it is important that so it's the balance between letting these organic solutions come by. You know, as I always say, you know, if you had said to me, come up with an idea of what a man can do, I would have never thought to say, oh, maybe you should study husband's school, right? So we need to be able to allow for this organic and some ideas that we would not naturally not think about to come from the men themselves. But we also know that there is a big need because of the 600 emails we get on a daily basis. Some men just simply don't know what to do. So we are going to do a crowdsourcing. We will revamp our website and, again, at a very high level, include some thought starters. Here are the 10 things that men can do in a household. Here's the 10 things that men can do in a workplace. Here's 10 things that women can do as well. You know, so that's certainly something that we're looking into. And in fact, one of our exercises today is to do that small exercise to crowdsource with you, and so that perhaps you could give us some ideas as well in terms of what we can do. Then the next question, the lady in the green, thank you very much for, again, this is not the first time we're hearing this question, so which means that, you know, it's something that people have raised. And the answer for us is very simple. We firmly believe, the executive director firmly believes that in order to achieve equality, we have to have men and women working together on equal footing. We purposely did not include women in the phase 1 of the campaign because women are already at the table. This was an initial push to get more men to the table. And again, we know, obviously, we need to fine-tune our message. If the message is not coming across in saying that it is not about men speaking on behalf of women, it is not about men speaking for women, but really that it is men speaking alongside women, then, you know, we may need to look into that. But the idea is that men and women have to work together. They have to put equal responsibility in this issue. This is why we are targeting men as part of phase 1. And then as part of the phase 2, which again incorporates the whole crowdsourcing, we're actually looking at revamping the website to include both men and women working together. We wanted to reach the critical mass, and I think at about 200,000, we are at a good place where we can start to now collectively, as all of society, address these issues. So that's really our goal. It is not, and we apologize if there's an offensive thing that's coming across. The idea is just to really say, men have to be responsible. They have to be accountable. We need them at the table. And then, again, a very interesting point about the benefit for men as well, right? And so, again, delicate balance. We outline this. We had to find a way as well that this moves beyond the emotional argument, right? This is not about men supporting women out of pity. This is not about men supporting women because it's the right thing to do, but it goes beyond that. It's also the smart thing to do. There's an economic and social imperative. Men benefit when women benefit. Men also suffer from inequality, right, and the stereotypes and the prejudices that come with that. But at the same time, as UN Women, our mandate is women and girls. We also firmly believe that, you know, there's a long way to go for women and girls, so therefore we will need to focus on that. We are rallying men. We are not, unfortunately, at this point going to be looking for jobs for men, but we want men to be our partners. We want them to at least bring women to parity. Again, we are not looking for, it's not a zero-sum game. We are not looking to be more powerful than men. All we are trying to strive for really is parity, same opportunities that men have that women should have as well. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Any online?
Okay. Do we have anything online?
Any more questions at this point? Or comments? Yes, we have one here in the front row. Thank you. The microphone is coming.
Hi, my name is Jeanette. I just want to ask if you're going to translate the campaign into other languages, like Spanish, Arabic, and so on.
Yes. So let me just remind you again about the age of the campaign. The campaign is 4 months old. In 4 months, we went to creating a campaign from scratch, tried to be a bit more revolutionary with it, as we are realizing it's not smooth, right? We are working on it, but it was an important thing to sort of push the boundaries, to try and do something that we had not done before. But within those 4 months, we developed a campaign which was only supposed to do one thing. It was only to raise awareness. Then we got the critical mass. And then the whole UN was saying, well, you have all these men, what are you going to do? This can't just be awareness raising. And then the men themselves were saying, well, we want to do more. We just don't want to be click activists. So within those 4 months, we rallied McKinsey. We got McKinsey on board. We developed a strategy document. We developed a pilot initiative. We identified our 3x3 for the pilot initiative, and we launched at Davos, of all places, in 4 months in the UN. So, so all this to say, we are almost building the plane as we're flying it. So there's still a lot more learning to be done. But to answer your question specifically, the HeForShe website is in 3 languages. Which is the standard UN Women languages. However, because of the popularity of the campaign, our action kits actually, and also because of the need to integrate this within the UN system, the action kit is now in 6 languages. We would love to be able to offer the website in the 6 languages, but again, from a financial standpoint, we can't do that. In fact, this whole campaign, I think, it's been developed with pretty much a lot of pro bono support. There was no budget when I started working on this campaign. And so what we are doing, though, is we are creating, sort of as a midpoint, we are creating landing pages for countries. China, for example, we have not done enough to mobilize the men in China. We know that language is a big barrier. We are creating a landing page for China so that they can have the map in Chinese. We're doing a similar thing for Turkey. So for all our priority markets where colleagues are asking for localized pages, we'll create those pages for them.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me? My name is Anne-Sophie. Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. How many people are you working on this campaign? And for how long time do you foresee working on it? Are you going to continue for years? And also, now looking at how many men signed up for this, are you in any way worried? I know you talked about getting emails from all over the world, but are you worried that still it's sort of the well-to-do, well-educated men having a conversation with each other and not really, what are your plans for really going further in society and getting more men and not the well-educated to sign up?
Okay. Yes. How many people are working on the campaign? Up until 3 months ago, it was myself and a young intern who's 19. But actually, I want to save that question for some of the key lessons. Because again, despite the fact that it has really been a very, very skinny support in-house, there's also been some very key contributors that I want to be able to acknowledge in the lessons learned for the campaign, which I think will also be good, for those that want to do a similar thing. Hopefully, our 2 cents can be worth something. Now, yes, the plan for the campaign, again, the initial plan for this campaign was that it would implement until September 2015. But again, as I mentioned too, because of the uptake that we have seen, we are actually now looking at how this can become a critical component to UN Women's strategic pillars. So we have in the UN identified 2030 as the end point for gender inequality. And so we are looking at how HeForShe can be a very key contributor to that movement. So for the time being, the show will go on, as they say. How are we targeting men? You are absolutely right. So again, as I mentioned to you, it's a four-month campaign. We started online, but it's also important to point out that what you see online is literally a drop of the entire impact of the campaign. It is being implemented in country offices around the world, UN Women, for example, 90 country offices. What we actually want to be able to do as well as the next phase of the campaign is to be able to show the offline activation, so the data that's coming from that, from community events. So our country offices are having community events where they can sensitize men and they are reporting to us internally. So we want to be able to put that online so that, again, anyone who's having a HeForShe event, and on average there's about 10 to 12 events that happen on a daily basis, some that have absolutely nothing to do with us. So, you know, we sort of get emails and people say, oh, I had my HeForShe event and here's some pictures from it. But again, to make sure that we continue to reach the people that we need to reach, we are launching a HeForShe mobile app beginning in April for implementation in the developing world, so that, again, people within those regions are able to activate either via just a short code, so a text message, as well as being able to download an app and sign up. So those are our three strategies. So it's the community engagement, having these local events, also now taking HeForShe onto mobile, and of course the online component as well.
We'll just take one last question. Yeah. And then we move into second round, and there will be more time for questions, not to worry. But one last question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I have a question regarding your support to affirmative action, such as legislation, looking at boards, because looking at Denmark, we don't have big issues concerning domestic violence and issues like that. However, we see, of course, we do have issues. I'm not, but it's, yeah. Well, a big issue is actually that even though we have achieved quite a great deal of equal rights, we still have a pretty big difference looking at salaries and looking at female participation in boards. At the same time, and this is widely acknowledged in Denmark, at the same time looking at surveys and the Danish support for actually taking actions, legislation and so on, there's literally no support in Denmark. At the same time, this study from Norway, it's from McKinsey actually, a McKinsey study showed that actually to really gain and come to a point where you have equal participation in boards, you need to combine efforts with legislative actions and affirmative actions. So I'd just like to hear what your views on affirmative actions are. Yeah, thank you.
So this taps right into the impact 10 by 10 by 10. And to your point, the reason why we chose the three sectors, right, and in particular the two sectors that you've just referred to. So why did we decide to target heads of state, and why did we decide to target the corporations? Well, it's because based on the WEF report, the gender report actually speaks to the fact that a lot more progress still has to be done at those levels, right? We don't have, sadly, one country in the world that has achieved parity. We don't have a company in the world that's been able to address the issues of equal pay and having women on the board. So the HeForShe Impact 10 by 10 by 10 is our targeted focus to look at how can we shift that. And so, for example, to speak again just to the issue of equal pay, the engagement framework to become an impact champion as a corporation, one of the things that you have to do is to sign the Women Empowerment Principles. I know it's very UN language, but this is a UN document that outlines the 7 principles of good business behavior. So looking at the issue of, the number of women on the boards, the number of women at every single level within the organization, but also the issue of equal pay. So we are also looking at how can we, as part of this top-down approach, the Impact 10 by 10 by 10, have the first company in the world that would like to achieve parity. And I have to say, we actually have one company that is determined to do this. So stay tuned, because we will start also uploading, as of April, the Impact Champion commitments. These have to be real, concrete commitments. And so, and again, the issue in terms of the government as well. So some of the governments, they've actually taken their HeForShe commitment. I think I can publicly share the one from Sweden because it's out there. The Prime Minister of Sweden, for example, our inaugural impact champion, he declared himself a he for she. He declared his government a feminist government. He then also issued a press release saying that as part of his he for she commitment, he is looking at how the internal policies within Sweden will be guided by this sort of gender equal focus, but also his foreign policy agenda will also be guided with that. So looking at investing only in issues that promote gender equality. So these are some of the things that we hope we can tease out at the government level and the corporate level to be able to address the issues of legislation that you're referring to.
And I just want to add one point. I think one of the interesting things about the Impact 10 by 10 by 10 program is the opportunity it provides for companies and universities and country governments to collaborate with each other. And so the program really highlights kind of gold standard setters who are already at the forefront of making changes and implementing policies and seeing really exciting results. I think our hope is that by kind of highlighting that conversation and bringing more people in and giving them the opportunity to kind of learn from what these countries and corporations are doing and to really start to see the impact of it, that there'll be, we'll all be able to see what the results are, get a better sense of what this looks like, and see some kind of real world examples of how this can play out. So countries that may not be there yet will get a chance to look at how this could apply to them.
Okay, so before we move on, we're going to check into our numbers. Who has been able to mobilize at least one man? Okay, 2 men?
3, 4 people. That's 5.
3 men? Okay, we have a winner at 3 men. So here's your pin.
We'll go down with the
Yes. Yeah, okay, so now we are going to move on to the section, the section about some of the lessons learned on this campaign. Like I mentioned to you, when we started, this was almost like a crazy idea, right? We didn't know whether it was going to work. It was a risk because, again, we also knew that as the women movement, we tend to be very protective of our space, and that's a wonderful thing. But we also felt that we have to, as Pumzila always says, what more can I ask of the women? They've been working for so long, and now we need men to also come to the table. So people ask me, so what have you learned in the 4 months that you've launched the campaign? And here's my key lessons, which is, number 1, I wrote them somewhere. It's important to have a good strategy because it grows its own legs, right? We launched this, it was a crazy idea, but at least we knew what we wanted to do. We're convinced that this was something that may work. And so we went ahead and we created it. And because it's something that resonated to the people, and I think also it was, to be honest with you, I think it's the time, right? So we can't take credit for everything. I think the issue of women is at the forefront of everyone's mind. I think it was just being at the right place at the right time. The world was ready for this. There were men who were ready for this. But because we had this strategy that this needed to happen, it pretty much grew its own legs. So that our work was almost halved. We didn't have to do as much work to achieve the impact that we needed to achieve. The second thing for me was to understand and know your role. We did not create a movement. People created a movement. We were facilitators. We knew exactly what it is that we could do and what we couldn't do. What we could do was to be able to provide people with the action kits. So when you go on our website at HeForShe.org, we see that we created some action kits in the 6 UN languages, and people literally ran with those, right? So we gave them the tools to be able to implement the campaign, and they created the movement. My third lesson is that it's important to surround yourself with smart people, smarter than you, which is what I did. So it was looking also at internally, despite having myself and an intern, sort of the core team of the HeForShe, we also leveraged our experts within UN Women. I was new to UN Women. I mean, I've been there for a year. And so it was important to be able to tap into the knowledge experts. So I set up something called HeForShe Innovation Fridays, which was, again, a crowdsourcing platform every Friday, colleagues from around the world would dial in and be able to contribute to the campaign. So we'd crowdsource and say, I don't know how to position this. You know, how would you position this as our gender experts? And they were able to give me some really, really critical feedback, sometimes, you know, constructive criticism, but also some very great contribution as well. We also surrounded ourselves with the knowledge experts in the space. So they are men organizations. So whilst, you know, this is very exciting, it's also important to point out that we're not the first one to mobilize men. Men have been mobilizing themselves for quite a while. And there are some really great organizations, one of which is called the Men Engaged Network, an affiliation of about 600 men organizations around the world. We worked with Gary Barker, who's the founder. We work with Professor Michael Kimmel, who is the professor of the Sunnybrook, the Masculinity Center. Is the only one in the US. Again, in terms of understanding from them, how do we message to men without getting too emotional, you know, because I will get too emotional with it. And we wanted to find a message that men can also respond to in a positive way. And so they've become really a great partner of ours in terms of content creation. But even before that, the idea, the brand HeForShe actually came from publicists. So we had this idea that something had to happen. We needed to create a campaign. And we realized we are not campaign developers. So we went to publicists, the French advertising company, and said, we have no money, but we have a really great idea that may actually solve something in society. Could you give us pro bono services? And they said yes. And so we started working with their creative team, and they created this. And in fact, I have to say that I think every single thing that we've done on the campaign thus far has been as a result of just remarkable support. The brand itself was created by a small agency called DEAR, again on a pro bono basis. I drove them literally insane because, again, the idea was, you know, let's come up with something that is powerful, that is fresh, that is inspiring to both men and women, but it has to be significant. It can't be a random symbol. I don't know how many of you can guess what this is. Do you know what the symbol represents? Yeah. Exactly, exactly. So again, we started with the premise that, you know, here's the female symbol as you know it, here's the male symbol as you know it, and this is the status quo, and we're not talking to each other, and we have to find a way to get together. So we meshed them, and actually what happens is a beautiful thing, because we formed a plus sign. We have an arrow pointing to the right. Anyone who's in finance knows that that's very positive. The important thing for me was that the arrows actually came together. The man is lifting the woman up, and, oops, sorry, the man is lifting the woman up, and also we made a deliberate choice to put this color, which I'll explain to you what this is all about as well. There's a long history to this color, that it's set on the man, because we actually think women should be able to wear pink, if this is what you may call it. And some people say, you know, this is a man moving forward. You know, I see a man move. Almost everybody has their own interpretation, but we ended up with a very powerful symbol that was meaningful. And then the color became a whole big issue because, again, we wanted something that would become a brand in its own right. So when you think about Lance Armstrong and the yellow wristband, it's a visual thing. Project Red has their red color. And so I knew that we needed to find a way that we can drive for this visual brand for the campaign. I think the creative team came to me with about 80 colors. And I kept saying, no, it's not right, it's not right. And literally one day I went home, and my husband is a creative guy, and I said to him, how much do you love me? And he said, why? I said, could you create me a color? And he actually created me a color. So, but there's a funny story, because he creates a color, and it's 1 month before the launch of the campaign. So then I take my wonderful brochure to get printed, and they said, we can't print this color, it doesn't exist. So I literally called Pantone in tears saying, I need to print brochures, I'm going to launch in a month's time, can you create this color for me? And they said, well, we can't turn around creation of a color in 1 month. So I ended up working with a color psychologist, and we matched my original color as close as we could to the Pantone color. So, but it was a really wonderful relationship, and there's a powerful color psychology around this color, why we chose it, and I'll try and find a brochure for you before we close, and I will read it to you. There's a reason why the men, and there's a magenta, it's actually magenta, that's the official name, magenta filter on our men, because it's them identifying with the issue of gender inequality, seeing it through the lenses of women. My last lesson was think beyond the hashtag. this became very clear to us. We had gone to launch very satisfied. We are just driving awareness, hashtag HeForShe, and then we can all go home and gender inequality will no longer exist, which of course was not correct. And I think immediately after we launched, as I said, I think we've been flying building the plane as we're flying it, because with every success also comes a huge responsibility and lots of expectations. And so right after we launched, there was this whole big question in the UN saying, well, what is this campaign doing? And we said, well, awareness. They said, well, people are aware now, so what are you doing next? So it was quickly figuring out, how can we come up with a strategy? How can we quickly move beyond the hashtag? How can we come up with a pilot initiative? And also, how can we now start giving men things that they can do? And one of the things, again, to answer your question, we are looking at one of the biggest questions we get is from men saying, can you link me with the other men in my country? We had 3 men out of Nigeria that said, oh, who are the other men? We want to do a protest for our missing girls. We actually had a man also from one of the countries who said, I'm an attorney. I'm so moved with what happened in India. So can you please connect me to that family? The girl was raped on the bus. I actually want to go then pro bono give my services to her family. So we are now looking at how can we create this local action network. So when a man signs up on the HeForShe, he can opt in to be able to share his email address with the men in his community. And I think also once we have this, to your point, we will start to drive this sort of community, sense of community, and I think maybe even drive for more action and impact. So those are my 4 lessons that I've learned so far on this campaign. I'm sure I'll have plenty more as we continue to build on the campaign. But again, I want to stop here. Maybe a small bathroom break, perhaps, and then we'll come back. Do people need a bathroom break?
It could be, but that is a logistical.
Okay, so Oscar says you have to stay.
We can do a 5 minutes if that's fine. People can stand up.
I think it would be good.
Minutes,
yeah, so let's do 5 minutes, check emails, reach out to people, sign up to HeForShe, use the bathroom, and let's come back.
Bathrooms are down the hallway to the right. Down the hallway to the right.
We need 66 men.
For those still in the room, we are now 1,934. Can we get to 2,000, please, before we leave? We are almost there.
2 minutes more, 2 minutes more, we start. All right, gentlemen and ladies, we are about to start again. Are we on? Yeah, we're on. We are about to start again. Just let me speak up here. Sound. Okay, we are kicking in again. Everybody, if you would kindly sit down, and then we are ready for the last half hour. Thanks a lot.
Still 1937. We need more numbers. Okay, so now this is the fun part of this, at least for us. It's your turn to help us to reshape the campaign in a way that is going to be meaningful, that is also going to inspire you. So we have two sections of our crowdsourcing. The first section is really to get your input in terms of knowing what you know, and I'm sure it's not everything that you need to know, but at least with a little that you know thus far, what should we be thinking about on this campaign? How might we improve it from your standpoint so that, again, it resonates with yourselves, just more on a personal level as well? So Lauren is taking down notes. If somebody wants to go.
Yeah, we have one in the back and then later one up in front here. And let me look at the right side of the place. Well, this is the time to be creative and come with all your advices to UN Women and HeForShe. Let's keep it at HeForShe. The UN Women advices we'll take later. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, you probably thought about this before, but I was thinking, since gender equality means different things in different countries, because Denmark is a good example of a country that thinks everything is fixed because formally it should be. So I don't know, in some way trying to shape the campaign somewhat after what country or the men in that country that you're talking to, and trying to focus, okay, we don't have a huge problem with domestic violence here, but maybe there's something else, because in that way I think it will resonate more with the men in that particular country.
We'll take some more. We have one up front here. Thank you.
Well, I'm Anastine, and thank you very much for the inspirational morning. I think regarding men, I think one of the important things in this country, and I agree with the former question, that we kind of think, many people think that we have equality in Denmark. I think the fathers should teach their daughters to be everything they ever want to. We've just seen this viral campaign with girls, how they run, and I think you've probably seen that, and I think that's very obvious that we bring up girls, and we still do, with limitations. And I think the man has a very important part there to be able to share techniques and physics and math and everything which is male dominated, and say, sure, you can do that, honey. Come, sit down, let's do that. I think that's a very important part of it.
Thank you. We'll take another 2 comments down by Frida first, and then in the 4th row, middle.
Hi. So I had a question about the campaign and it's the way it's been addressed. So far it seems mostly like it's been addressing cisgendered women and kind of like the traditional idea of women. But I was wondering if it's also planning on trying to include all sorts of women, especially transgendered people, and how the campaign plans on doing that.
Great, thank you. In 4th row, mid, comments or questions? Everything is welcomed.
Yeah, we have one here.
Okay, my turn. I have a question regarding, you talk about phase 1, phase 2, and in terms of partnerships, strategic partnerships. I mean, engaging a Swedish prime minister and a multinational and some celebrity, that makes total sense. But then to seize the momentum and maybe, I don't know, penetrate unexpected clusters and unexpected groups. I mean, let's say you go for DreamHack in Sweden, like the biggest computer gaming event, for example. I mean, if you want to go viral, you should really penetrate that group, and that's like 99% guys and anything. Do you have any ideas how to think unconventional in phase 2 and not just targeting the expected ones?
Thank you very much. We'll take a second round. Don't worry. Just want to know if Elizabeth have a few comments at this point.
No, I'm listening.
Good. We're continuing. Now, 4th row.
Hi, Elizabeth. One of the very interesting statements you made very fleetingly was, we want men to look through the women's eyes. And that is something that is very essential to this campaign, for a change, looking through the female gaze. Also, it's important to note, because the campaign reads he for she, there is a possibility for it to be interpreted as seeking the man, not just to stand for the woman, but invoking the man in his protector, savior role. And that is where some women do take issue with it, because we're not seeking, come and save us. We just want you to be sensitized enough to hear us and to speak up for us when on all those moments surrounding you. So while he for she is a very powerful statement, there is a tendency to be misread, misheard. It doesn't say he with she, for instance. So there is that possibility for a fallout. Just somewhere in the campaign, maybe you can spell this out and clarify what the position is when you say he for she. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Then we have right there a lady in grey jacket, and then after a gentleman down in the back.
Hello. I'm just thinking, because the webpage is very nice and you can sign up and stuff, but is there at any point where you actually receive ideas or something more specific? Because it's very general, and if you're in a country where it's perhaps more taboo or difficult than in Denmark to actually fight for women, is there any ideas or suggestions or something in that general idea area that could help the men, or where they can discuss or talk to each other or something?
Thank you. Then one more comment or question from the back, and then maybe Elizabeth have a few comments. Thank you.
Hello. I work a lot with the startup scene, and there is a new entrepreneur leadership, young people that could get involved in this campaign. And it sounds like what do you call it? You had a very UN word for it. The crowdsourcing. No, what was it? Was some initiative about bringing in companies, corporations, and I think at the time being there's a lot of young entrepreneurs making a lot of efforts, and maybe they could get on board and give some HeForShe stamp love for bringing this to their companies. And maybe that could be a movement from the bottom up, because they are usually, you know, sexy startups and they can create a lot of attention. So that could be an idea.
Take one more over here, and we'll get back. I see more hands now, which is great. But with one more, and then Elizabeth just have a few comments.
Well, thank you very much for a great presentation. I would love for the campaign to also somehow bring focus to all the unpaid and invisible work that women do, and somehow help societies challenge us to attach as much economic value and prestige to that work. And some of the things that only women can do, like having children. So it's not just about women being able to do everything that men do, but attaching as much value to the things that women actually do. That would bring equality.
Thank you, Rikke. And you want to go? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'll comment.
Just if you have a comment.
Yeah, so I am going to comment only on questions, because I would take the inputs as they are, because it's important for us to listen as well. The bigger question was around, so the first question was about localizing the campaign, which I think is a very valid point. We do have the action kits, but I think there's need to do more on that. Fathers should teach their daughters everything. Actually, that's a very powerful point. And in fact, the PSA that you saw of the HeForShe man is done by the same production team as Throw Like a Girl. So we are working with the same team in terms of coming up with even newer ideas that can be as compelling as the Throw Like a Girl campaign. The gamers, it's a huge potential for us. We have not tapped into it, so that's a very good suggestion that we are going to take forward in a much more serious way. HeForShe, to your point, yes, it was a very compelling idea, right, in terms of positioning it. But again, ultimately, the last thing that we want to do is to lose the women, right? So we are trying right now, the women are at the table, we're trying to bring men to the table. We don't want to end up doing this, because then we go back to square one. So finding a way, to your point, that we're trying to explain this will be important. We did try to address this with the tagline that's on the website that says, HeForShe is about bringing together one half of humanity, which is men, in support of the other humanity, which is women, for the benefit of all. But now to touch on to the LGBT question, we know, again, I'm getting full transparency, right? This is a learning campaign for us. We don't claim to have all the answers. In schools in the US, for example, we're having to readdress this issue, because they are sort of saying the way you've positioned this assumes that there's only two genders, right? There's male and female, and we are not addressing the LGBT. So we are also now fine-tuning this message around how do we position this. And again, you know, the honest honest truth is that our mandate as UN Women, we don't address LGBT, but of course equality for us is important irregardless of what the gender is for anybody. But yes, I think finding out a way to have this much more pronounced will be very critical for the campaign. And we actually had a working session with some language and gender experts in London 2 months ago, and we're waiting for the outcome of that report, which was just really a brainstorming to say, what is the language that we can use? Because again, this is quite new, and it's also very volatile, right? It can go wrong at any moment. So we have to be sensitive to the men, we have to be sensitive to the women, we have to find that right balance. It's challenging, but it's quite inspiring for us because it's new and it's fresh, and we're gonna make mistakes, but we have to continue to learn and listen to the voices of the people that are contributing. Startups, it's a fantastic idea. We're actually speaking to a corporate partner who wanted to do, what do they call them? They are not crowdsourcing. What did in the tech industry, they bring together tech people and they identify a problem and they all solve the problem and they come up with a solution. Hackathon, that's it. Hackathon, yes. So there was a question about invisible work for women. Yes, we hopefully can try and address this with some of our impact champions, in particular the heads of state. So this is something that perhaps one head of state, as their HeForShe commitment, can look at how we can address that.
Thank you. And allow me to take a little bit of time here, a short moment to also do some local commercializing here, because also in the Nordics, of course, we work with HeForShe at so many levels. We work very closely actually with corporations in the Nordics. In Denmark, we have a close dialogue on many issues with, for instance, Novo Nordisk, which is a strong supporter of gender equality and so many other things. But we have also been inspired by groups that have come forward and say we want to do something, and there's an amazing group called Young Men for Gender Equality at CBS, who is now a HeForShe supporter, and there's also an unbelievable strong group at Copenhagen University who have created their own group to become HeForShe supporters. So this work goes on in so many ways, and both of these two groups, if you happen to be at CBS or Copenhagen University, easy to find and locate, and this is just spreading constantly, and new ideas come in. So, and that is exactly, as Elisabeth have also said all along, very important that you tag on and come up with what you think is the most important way to carry this forward.
And actually, just as a quick sidebar on that, we now have more than 100 HeForShe student associations around the world. So again, as part of our phase 2, we'll be able to sort of show where those are, again, to show the groundswell that the campaign is creating. Now, we have maybe 5 more minutes, and I want to switch up the question, and I want men to speak to us, because we've only had from 2 men so far, which is around the thought starters. Yeah. Could you give us some ideas of what a man can do to support gender equality as part of HeForShe?
Jan, you have the floor.
Yes. Hello, my name is Jan. To answer your question, I actually had a comment first. Could I do that first? So I'm also involved in the CBS project with promoting the campaign there. But we have... from what I heard from you today, you talked about how we also can connect between, obviously right now we learned some weeks ago that there was actually also a group at the Copenhagen University who is doing sort of the same things as we are doing, and you talked about this as well. So I signed up a couple of months ago on the webpage, but to be able to connect the people who signed up there, the men, somehow that they can also see what is going on in their countries or in their regions, for that matter, could also be very inspiring for instance, for us who's then trying to do something here. So if it could be like, I don't know if it's possible, and if you can sort of be able to steward it in a way that fits with UN Women, but to sort of make a forum where you have where the different sort of initiative takers bring forward their ideas and their projects, and then you can sort of go in there and actually be inspired to do something yourself. I think in a way that could also serve as a sort of mental kit for people then to sort of execute their promotion of the campaign in whatever place they might be in the world. In regards to your question about what men can do, I think we can definitely do a lot. I think this formal invitation from last year from UN Women, at least it reached out to me, and I think it can be reached out to more people once they start learning about the campaign. But then to be able to sort of that you can confront men with some tangible examples of how this rollout of the campaign can be done. It's probably makes it more easier to sort of come up with an idea that's suitable to your own environment, I think.
Can you give us what is suitable to your own environment? So what is the one thing that you have done since becoming aware of the campaign?
Right now I'm also involved in the organization called Young Men for Gender Equality, which was also started up last year. And that's an organization now in 40 different countries. And basically, as its name implies, we kind of feel that the HeForShe campaign is a very good fit for what the work we want to promote as well, which is then to address issues regarding gender inequality and to sort of stand up for improving the situation in different countries around the world. What we have done right now in our local group at CBS is that we have started up promoting the campaign. We will in April this year have an event there with also representatives from UN Women here in Nordics, and also people from our school who are sort of, as far as we concerned, the best fit who can actually address these issues also towards students. I think personally that we are involved in a student environment, which was also part of what you presented here. The fact, I think it's very important that you also address this to students. First of all, in regards to social media, the students are a very good target because they know it and they have all the apps you need. And second of all, it's students are those who will later on in their life, whether it's in academia or strictly business or whatever, they will be in organizations where gender equality will be an issue also in the work environment and the career-wise, where it's then important that men, especially, and also women, I think, that they know what kind of sort of mental barriers there might be that needs to be challenged, obviously, to ensure that we have improve in regards to gender equality.
The men over here are very quiet. Yes.
We have one at the back.
Yeah, I find it's interesting that you are doing a HeForShe campaign and you're letting she do all the work. And what I mean about that is that you had a tremendous response with the Emma Watson video, but where's the other side of that equation? There's no guy. And I think if you need to get guys, and especially younger guys with and involved, you need to do something like the UN Food Program did with Zlatan. Get a guy like that up. Even better, if you can get a guy up that has some experience with kind of doing something for women, that would be a very powerful tool. And I don't know if you did the Emma Watson thing on a deliberate choice or if it was an opportunity that presented itself, but I think, you know, having a HeForShe campaign without he, then it's hard to get to the he's. And then my second part of that question is, the speech has gotten a lot of views, but if I look at it from a complete social media point of view, as a campaign manager, I would be worried about the very low conversion rate that I have. And that would be something I would say, okay, how do I address that? You have all the elements for creating a movement, all like the psychological elements and everything is right. So you need to figure out what's the part that connects to that part. And I think you need the male part of the campaign. I don't know if the question is really, was there a deliberate choice not to have a male in the setup when you presented and launched the campaign? Because I think you need to go to each part of the world and find these guys who's willing to stand up and take a stand and say, yes, I am a he for she, but have, soccer players and American football players and ice hockey players and, stuff like that.
I'll just quickly answer you, actually, before we take more questions. Very valid point. Yes, it was a deliberate choice to launch with Emma Watson. We wanted to position this, again, from a female perspective, right? This was a campaign from UN Women. It was important that a woman recognized, and she has a very personal, powerful story to tell about how this impacted her, not having the equality recognized on both sides. But you're quite right in terms of getting more men involved. In fact, again, it's only a case of resources, which we're addressing right now. We should be able to show more of the men that have lent their voice to the campaign, and that we are developing now launch strategies to the same level as Emma. There's actually two aspects to this campaign that is part of phase 2. Number one is to include more male voices. When we launched, there was Kiefer Sutherland, Mr. 24. He was and he remains one of our key advocates. We also, as of last month, we have officially appointed a goodwill ambassador, Farhan Akhtar, who is one of Bollywood's biggest celebrity as a he for she. So again, he's going to be mobilizing men within India, so very much localized, a local hero that young boys and women can relate to. At a global level, again, it's a very quick sidebar. We were at the Oscars this Sunday with Steve Carell, who was kind enough to lend his voice to the He for She campaign. And again, since the launch, we've had really from Forrest Whitaker, Matt Damon, and all these people sort of lend their voice. But yes, we are now looking at establishing the next sort of Emma Watson, if you're on the male side. Another important part to this as well is now we're at a stage where we need to expand the face of the campaign beyond Emma, to really focus also on the credible thought leaders, experts that we have, both on the impact side. So we are also developing for our Impact 10 by 10 by 10 champions, as we look at these heads of states, as we look at these CEOs, as we look at these university presidents, we want them to become the face of the He for She campaign as well. And of course, our ordinary man, our extraordinary, unsung ordinary man, as well as the women. So again, a very quick story. When Finland held the national event for He for She, the former Prime Minister of Finland, who's a woman, who was at the launch event, she didn't want to be left out. She said, I am now the godmother of He for She for Finland, self-declared, and I am going to mobilize 1 million men as part of my own commitment. So we are also looking at the role of women strongly emerging as part of this campaign as we move forward.
To many of you, that is known. That is former President Tarja Halonen of Finland, who is now a godmother of the He for She campaign.
In Finland.
Globally. And Finland. Now, a last couple of comments or questions, 2, 3 ones before we wrap up.
Want to hear from the man.
Yeah, coming over there.
In answer to your question of what men can do, I think one thing that's critically important is to get involved with schools and youth groups as like a coach or a mentor, so that we raise confident girls and conscientious boys and have an entire generation raised on equality, so that we're starting right from square one.
And then we have a gentleman over here.
Okay. Yeah, I was the one that talked about peer accountability, and I believe it relates to what was said about the conversion rate. Like, what do you do? And you're talking about concrete ideas. So you talked about developing it, like having an app or SMS services for regions where apps aren't as prevalent. And I was just thinking, how about if you make the app responsive so that you as a man could kind of give input into the app, saying what kind of gender-based inequality have you experienced today, and you can kind of either pick from a category or put it in yourself, which would to a very high degree localize the campaign, right? Because then if you're in India, you might see a woman getting beaten up on the street, and that's what you will have noticed today. Or if you're in Denmark, you might have noticed someone on your job making kind of a sexist joke about a woman. However, it's all part of the same campaign, right? So you would be able to put in and get some response, like you would feel like you would have contributed something today as a man, like I've noticed this, I've taken note of it, I've put it into the app, which would then in turn give you the possibility of seeing what does gender equality look like, what are the troubles in different regions, and then I would as a man look on my app and say, okay, so I'm in Denmark and the most prevalently reported problem is
a sexist joke, or it's that women are, I don't know, shunned out of male gatherings or whatever it is. And you would be able to say, okay, so this is actually the challenge that's the highest rated in my region or in my country. This is the challenge that other users, crowdsourced, if you will, are saying that's the issue. So hey, how about I do something to confront that?
Thanks a lot. Then first row, yeah. Oh,
there's a lady. Last comment.
Thank you.
Hi. Have you ever thought about teaming up with other NGOs on an international level? For instance, I work for the Fair Trade Labeling Organization here in Denmark, and international we're called Fair Trade International, where we also work on a gender issues within the third world countries.
Absolutely last comments or questions before we close? Yeah, over there, sold.
Yeah, it was just regarding DreamHack, which was mentioned before. I think that maybe you should try to reach out to companies like Naughty Dog, which is a game developer. They have openly spoken out that they've chosen to create strong female characters in their games because they want to create more equality. And I might think that companies like them could be a strong collaboration also, because then it doesn't become something you tell young men and boys what to do, but something that they experience through entertainment rather than something being dictated or something being removed from the experience. So, yeah. Neil Druckmann, I think, is the main guy to go to.
Partners and
yeah. We are open for partners, so we'd love to speak to you after this.
Great. Now we're coming to the end, and before I close officially, we have a commercial break, one more commercial break by Mr. Social Media Week himself. So, Mads, you got the floor.
I'm actually just going to say it from down here, very much in line with this talk we have today. I just want to point out on Thursday at 2:30, we have an event. It's with Elaine Percival. She has started a movement that's called Women Who Code, and it's also about gender equality and how you can kind of improve businesses from that point of view. So it's on Thursday, 2:30. You can go to the schedule on socialmediaweek.org/Copenhagen and sign up there, and it's free to attend.
Thank you. Thank you, Mads, and thank you, Social Week, for inviting United Nations into this. There is another event at the UN City this afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock on My World. And before I thank Lauren and Elizabeth and all of you for coming, I just want to say it's been a great couple of hours, and the Nordic office of UN Women is here. We are very easy to locate on the email, and any suggestions and ideas you have in the Nordic region are more than welcome. We are a powerful team, and we will do our living best to support you and take up your ideas. So keep them coming. And then, of course, I would like to thank Mads and Social Media Week team in Copenhagen for inviting us, United Nations, but also UN Women and HeForShe into this very great week. I certainly also want to thank the Public Diplomacy Office of UN in Copenhagen. That is Rebecca and Lotte and Nikolai and all led by no other than Eva. Thanks for all the work that's gone into this. I do need to thank my own colleagues, the Nordic team. And now you would think the list would be very long. It's not. A great thank to Elise, Frida, and Cecile for making this happening. And then, of course, ending with a great thanks and hopefully a big round of applause to the amazing team from New York and who is leading all of this work that you heard about for the last 2 hours, our HeForShe campaign. They're doing a lot of other things, but in particular HeForShe. Elizabeth and Laura, thanks for coming to Copenhagen. Thank you so much to all of you for coming, taking your time today to listen to us. Should not get up yet. We are ending with a strong, powerful message on the video. So we ask for you to sit back and relax for another 60, 90 seconds. We always end on time at the UN, so it will be noon before the video is over, don't worry. But sit back and that will be our last message. And so much thank you for coming.
We show our manhood by how we treat our women, our girls, our mothers, our sisters.
Violence against women and girls is a global problem. It harms women, families, communities, and societies.
Domestic violence continues to be a massive, unspoken of problem around the world, of course.
أنا أتمنى أيضاً لابنتي أن كما أتمنى للمرأة في العالم.
It's an objective fact that if you want to solve some of these huge kind of bigger problems of extreme poverty, you have to engage the women. That they're the ones who will get it done.
It is now noon, and you may leave the room. Before you do so, we are asking if we can have a couple of men, 3, 4, 5 men who would want to participate in our global campaign. If so, please come up here. We'll take some photos of you, which will go globally and universal. So don't shy away.